Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel. And in today's top stories from the Hill, Zelenskyy on NATO, no longer interested in their diplomacy. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who has urged NATO to take stronger actions throughout Russia's invasion, said in an interview that aired Sunday he is no longer interested in their diplomacy. When you're working in diplomacy, there are no results. All of this is bureaucratic, Zelenskyy said in an interview with CBS 60 Minutes. And I totally agree with him. And this is partly why I'm glad that the UK got out of the EU. Because the EU, like NATO, they enjoy their sense of authoritarianism. They like being able to be the rule makers and then enforcing those rules, not only to get compliance from the people, but also to extract money from them as well. Now, I know that sounds a bit hyperbolic because I'm just trying to generalize, but I'm so grateful that the UK got out of the EU, and I have very little empathy towards the EU, but I do have some concerns about the direction of Zelenskyy wanting NATO to get involved, of course, because he wanted a no-fly zone, which isn't really possible, because if you institute a no-fly zone, then it has to be enforced, which means that NATO forces would have to enforce that no-fly zone, which means an engagement with Russia and perhaps a kinetic war that NATO countries and surrounding countries probably don't want to participate in or be part of, because, of course, this could lead to further escalations. And, of course, we're trying to avoid that as much as possible. But I can understand Zelenskyy's frustration, irritation, and annoyance by just the bureaucracy. But the United States, the UK, and other nations around the area are trying to help him out as much as possible, as we have seen throughout the conflict. Now, something very interesting that's happening here that is very reflective of what we talk about here on the channel. Also from the Hill, Democrats seek to win over Ukrainian Americans by portraying GOP as soft on Russia. Democrats are pointing to the war in Ukraine as part of their effort to undercut Republicans with Ukrainian American voters ahead of the midterms. Why? Why are they trying to undercut Republicans? Why are they trying to yet again take ownership of a group of people to be able to suggest that they have the solutions, they have the answers, and they know how to handle these particular instances? Because we have seen already what they do with minorities and particular groups here in the United States. They let them all down, which is typically what they do. And there's plenty for the Democrats to focus on. We'll get to that in a moment. The party is aiming to portray Republicans as weak on Russia and messaging directed at Ukrainian Americans who, while not monolithic, have in recent history leaned conservative when it comes to foreign policy issues. Of course they lean conservative because they are rational, cogent, and reasonable people. They exercise common sense. They're able to look and assess and see what's going on. So I'm not sure what amount of effort the Democrats are going to put into this, but it shows and illustrates yet again that the Democrats, instead of focusing on the actual problems that are going on, they are trying to find a way to leverage individuals to vote for them. And really what it comes down to is Democrats want to remain in power, stay in power, and they will use whatever methods they can to stay in power. And we already saw what happened in 2019 and 2020, where they even violated state constitutions, particularly in Pennsylvania, to be able to ensure that mail-in ballots were used to flood the system, which our country was not accustomed to. This was all part of their strategy. And now they're trying to utilize what they're best at, and that is to take ownership of minorities and try to suggest to them that they have the solutions that they have the solutions and they have the ability to meet the expectations of these individuals, when in reality, all the help that's going to Ukraine is coming from taxpayers here in the United States. When money is being donated to them, it's usually coming from taxpayers. Now, individuals on their own have contributed as well. But when it comes to Democrats, any money they use is coming from the people, coming from Americans. So the idea that Republicans aren't doing enough, well, if you're using their money to help Ukraine and you're sending weapons and so forth that is paid through taxes as well, from the military side of things, then obviously it's coming from all Americans and not just Republicans. So the idea that they could sell the Ukrainians on the Democrats being the sole individuals making all this possible is an absurd and ridiculous sell, which I'm pretty sure isn't going to happen, because we saw what happened with Hillary Clinton. People just weren't buying Hillary Clinton. They weren't buying what they had to sell, just like with Joe Biden and his vaccine mandate, people just weren't buying it. It wasn't that people didn't understand. It wasn't that people were ignorant to the fact that, you know, having these vaccines could help. It was that people just simply wanted to exercise agency, and that's what Democrats don't understand. People have personal agency, but Democrats feel that they can persuade people to their ideology and philosophy as being the better way to approach all things. And of course, sadly, they have no particular solutions. They offered the Ukrainians no solutions here. They didn't offer the Ukrainians any solutions. They didn't say, well, if you support us, we'll do X, Y, and Z. No, what they're doing in this whole article is just talking about all the bad things that Republicans do, allegedly, because it isn't like Republicans can decide. Well, you got to understand, the Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So what the Republicans can do is very limited. So to suggest that the Republicans are weak on Ukraine or the incident in Ukraine is ridiculous, because any support that's going to Ukraine is coming from taxpayers. And there's plenty of things that the Democrats can focus on, from the last refuge. Latest CBS poll reflections, no hope for anyone. Okay, latest CBS poll reflects no hope for anyone, including Joe Biden and Democrats. So the Democrats have plenty to focus on. CBS has released their latest YouGov poll data here. I'll give you that link in a moment. Again, showing the top priorities of the American people, and not even on the radar of the American government. That would be the Democrats. The D.C. Beltway disconnect is stark. That's absolutely right. So instead of them trying to find solutions to the problem, or find solutions to the fact that while we're engaged in this particular sanctions against Russia, it's affecting the world, instead of the Democrats looking for solutions, what are they doing? They're trying to win over Ukrainians to get votes, American Ukrainians to get votes, which is just really is a disconnect, as I say here. And you can see here, issues that should be high priority: the economy, inflation, crime, Russia, Ukraine at 58%, and then immigration at 48%. It's absolutely amazing. And then you see here, Biden's handling of crime, 39% on crime, 38% on immigration, 37% on economy, and 31% on inflation. And of course, you can see the massive percentages there that disapprove. But of course, those Democrats, they got to get their votes. So let's set everything aside that's going on in our country. Instead of finding solutions to the problem, let's try to get Ukrainian Americans to vote for us. That's the Democratic strategy. And you can see here, if you go to that link that I just showed you there, the CBS News poll, and you can go into more of the details that outline what is being discussed within that poll. Generally speaking, do you feel things in America today are going very well? Only 7%. Somewhat well, 27%. Somewhat badly, 33%. And very badly, 33% as well, for a total of 100 there. But nonetheless, guys, I will leave a link to all of these, or a link to this particular poll and this particular CBS PDF. If you guys like, I'll leave it below this video. But nonetheless, I just found it fascinating that instead of Democrats focusing on what's important, finding solutions, and trying to resolve the issues that we're experiencing here in America, they're focusing on the war and trying to utilize and leverage it to get more votes from Ukrainians, which is sad, because it's not too dissimilar to the fact that NATO just keeps being bureaucratic. And I totally understand that it would be a very, very bad idea if NATO were to get involved. Now, I don't know how much further the conflict is going to go. It looks like Russia is falling back. It looks like they're trying to regroup. I don't approve of what Russia is doing, so I am not here to suggest in any way that I'm trying to defend Russia. I am simply just trying to put it into perspective in a just as an observer, and trying to be coherent about it, and also provide some levels of observation. And so we see that Zelenskyy is not particularly happy with all the bureaucracy from NATO. I totally understand that. But again, like I said, I'm just trying to be objective about this to show the side of Zelenskyy, and then, of course, the concerns of NATO and here in the United States. But, of course, I did have to point out yet again how Democrats like to take ownership of things to be able to control what they want to control, and get more people involved in their voting process to keep them in power, because it really comes down to them staying in power. If they're willing to try to control language, they're willing to try to control society, social engineering, and these sorts of things, then yeah, then they're absolutely going to go after these Ukrainian Americans who are very vulnerable right now. Democrats apparently like going after people when they're very vulnerable. They like that emotional state. They like that sense of chaos that's going on, so that they can rush in and suggest that they have solutions and are able to meet expectations, and in reality, they don't. So that's what I have for you guys. I want to thank all of you on Rumble, Odyssey, and BitChute for your guys' continued support. Thank you for the likes and shares there as well, and your comments. It's greatly appreciated. And, of course, all of you here on YouTube, thank you for the likes, the shares, and the comments. And I will see you guys in the next video.